G'day guys, welcome back to SuperCoach with DR and welcome to the first edition of the SuperCoach stock market for 2022. I'm pumped, I'm excited because this means that the real season starts. It's time for the price rises and these can be some of the most important decisions we make for the year. It could make or break our sides, and we've also obviously got the added bonus of being able to use a trade boost if we feel that's going to be beneficial for us this week. I know a few people in the community are thinking about it. So not only do we have the possibility to make 2 trades, maybe even 3. And personally, I might be using a boost this week myself, but we'll talk about all the relevant names as well as some pods as well. If you're new to the channel and you don't really know what we do during these videos, we take a look at all the break-evens for the relevant players, look at their projected prices. I give some advice on whether I think they're trade-in, trade-outs. We've got plenty of different symbols from the trap to the yin-yang to the roller coaster, those picks that tend to go up and down in their scoring. But look, what it is tough to do at this stage is look for scoring patterns. We've only got 2 weeks of data, maybe 4 weeks if you include the first practice match in the Amy series game, but really only 2 weeks data. So a lot of what we need to do this week is based off a bit of an educated guess off what we've seen so far. So it can be a little bit hard to predict at times, but hopefully I can help you out there. That's the idea with these videos anyway. But look, before I move on, I just do need to give a huge shout out. We've got the SuperCoach Hall of Fame legends here. We've got John O'Carroll, Benny Butcher, Corey Blackledge, and also Mitch Brown. All these blokes have just signed up as members to the channel. Now, it's not something that you have to do, but all the proceeds, if you sign up as a member and press the join button there, it's $3.99 a month or $1 a week. All the proceeds will go to Beyond Blue. So there's some perks here. You get some loyalty badges next to your name and live chat, monthly member videos and Skype chats as well. You'll also get a PDF copy of the stock market video notes. So every slide that you see here, you get a PDF copy with. You can print it out if you want or just leave it on your phone, your computer, and that's a really easy reference point as well. And as we said, 100% of the proceeds do go to Beyond Blue. So thank you very, very much to these 4 legends. And I also need to apologise to Big J from Centre Bounce, mate. I did forget to mention you in my round review video. It was awesome to meet you and catch up with you, buddy. Much peace and love, mate. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an awesome job. But look, guys, I think that's pretty much it for the intro. Let's start off with the 500k plus defenders. So the first man that we'll talk about this year is Jaden Short. I've got him as the best buy this week, 535,200 with a break even of 68. He's had a stunning start to the year. And when I say a stunning start, I must admit I was a little bit concerned after the first round. Looked like he was relying a little bit too much on the kick-ins and not getting enough of his own ball around the grounds. But all those concerns completely went out the window on the weekend. 33 disposals, 29 of those kicks, an overall disposal rate of 88%. Did have 8 turnovers, which was a little bit unfortunate, but a wonderful game from Short. Had 10 out of 13 kick-ins as well, so we know he's got the monopoly there. He's had premium scoring history before. I think that he is a really, really nice option, particularly going into this year with some of the concerns that we do have over other players. So if you haven't got him in your side, I advise, get him in if you can. Not an absolute must-have, but I think the pick of this bunch, in my opinion anyway. The next bloke, Sam Doherty, deserves a standing round of applause, this man, for just the fact that he's been able to come back and play football. I just, really admire what this fella's done. And from a SuperCoach sense, he's delivered with a 122 2-round average. Now, as a massive pod, I don't think too many people have him. I'd personally be looking at a Jaden Short over a Sam Doherty. So I don't think there's probably a world where you do bring him in, particularly when we've got one of his Carlton teammates where you're paying over 133,000 less. So for me, Doc will probably remain a pod, but if you started with him, congratulations, really, really good pick. Aaron Hall, now I must admit this one feels personal because I had him as my D1 all pre-season. I was a big believer in the Aaron Hall selection, but as soon as news came through that he had some hammy issues, he was just out the door for me, particularly with his history of durability and his age. It was just a risky starting pick, but after 2 weeks, he's got a 2-round average of 126, and he's doing exactly what I thought that he would do if he was injury-free. Now, it looks like he is. round one, there was a little bit of a concern. Looked like he grabbed around the hammy region, but ended up playing out the game. Only scored around 30 points in the second half, though, as compared to almost a ton in the first half. So certainly slowed down. Maybe slight concern there. But look, it's pretty simple. If he stays on the park, he's going to be our D1 this year. So if you trust his body, then I think you jump on. If not, you're assuming he probably doesn't play every game. Last game, a little bit quieter, to be honest, by his standards. 26 disposals, 81% efficiency. Only the 3 kick-ins. Zeeble had 4, McDonald 2, and Core 1. But I think Aaron Hall's the ultimate upside-downside pick. If you're a believer, I think you can jump on. Luke Ryan, definitely a pod. Had 7 out of 10 kick-ins over the weekend. Look, he's got a really high ceiling. He certainly could work out, but he's just probably not for me. I did own him a couple of years ago. I brought him in over the Seagull. Worked out for a couple of weeks, and Seagull ended up outscoring him by a little bit, I think. But it was still a good selection. But going into this year, I think there's probably other options that I'm interested in this stage. And he's an awkward trade in this week. If you got him, obviously keep him. And he's been a great selection so far. But I probably wouldn't be looking to trade him in at this stage. Cumming, 5 out of 13 kick-ins. Looks a player. Not at the price. So Dale took 3 of 5 kick-ins. Look, he's averaging 3 figures. Hold if you own, but probably not a trade in either. Jay-Z, 585,800. 2-round average of close to 120. He's pretty much continued on from last year, hasn't he? Had the most kick-outs for the Kangas on the weekends, only by 1, I know. But look, he's been an underrated selection, I think. There's nothing sexy about the pick, and it's probably that price point that's really put people off. I think if he was 50k cheaper, he would have been a more realistic option, I think, to start this year. But if you're one of the very, very few coaches that currently own him, well done. Keep on to him. Not a bad selection so far. Jordan Dawson, so again, another one of those sort of dodgier selections going into the year due to the fact that we hadn't really seen him during the preseason, had a bit of a calf niggle. I don't know what's up with Dawson, but it takes him a little while to wake up, I think. You look at his score at quarter time and you think, uh-oh, here we come, absolute train wreck. But both weeks, 2 weeks in a row, he's managed to work himself into the game and almost have an average at 3 figures. So 99, break even's 125, which is in the red, but that doesn't matter too much. May lose a little bit of coin, but is he someone you trade into? No. Is he someone that we hold? I think yes. Tommy Stewart, I've got the safe as houses symbol on him there because that's what he is. He's just safe as houses. If you're looking for someone at that higher price point, so let's just call them an Uber defensive premium, then I think Stewart's the man that you go. You've got someone like an Aaron Hall that presents a lot more upside when it comes to scoring power and scoring potential, but I think Stewart, even with the foot injury, I just feel that he's a little bit safer when it comes to durability stakes. So I could be wrong on that. Maybe I'm underrating that preseason injury or the injury from last year. I really don't know, but I just think he's a really safe pick, Stewart. And if you want to go for someone like that, I think he's fine. Jack Crisp, I was worried about him. I must admit that I was worried after round 1, but I did keep the faith and was really rewarded with his nice 120 odd over the weekend. So Crispy, he simply looked better. I don't know what was up round 1, but they didn't look to use him. I won't repeat what I've said in my round review videos, but basically with Crisp, I think he just had an off week round 1. Look, I'd personally rather see him coming off the halfback. I think that's probably where he'd score a little bit better, but what he did in the weekend was tackle. So had 11 tackles, which was a game high, and that just adds up when it comes to your SuperCoach total. Really, really handy to see Crisp really getting involved in the action. So I think this pick's going to work out okay. If you can go 100 flat to 105, I think we just take that from here to the rest of the year with Crispy. Now, Jordan Ridley, this is a little bit of a concern. Now, did have the majority of the kick-ins, although he did share it around. I think it was Laverde, Heppel, somebody else, might have been a Redman. I'm not too sure. But there are some red flags. You know, we did see him, I think it was in week 1, even get moved up forward for a small part of the game. I know this week that he did manage to go over a ton, which was great for owners in the fact that, hey, it looks like he's back if you just look at his score. But yeah, I don't think he's got the exact role that we were thinking we were getting with Jordan Ridley. And I say this as a collective. I'm not a Ridley owner. I wasn't a massive fan of the pick to begin with because I'm generally not one that goes for those intercepting type defenders. I like your Hewitt types, the accumulators, your Aaron Hall types, I suppose, over those Ridley Sicily types. But If you've got him, is he a must trade? I don't know. It depends who you haven't got on your side. So if you've got Ridley and you haven't got a George Hewitt, who we'll talk about a little bit later, then I think that you probably pull the trigger. If you haven't got a Short, if you haven't got any other major concerns or must trade-ins, I think it's okay to pull the trigger. Again, I think it's also okay if you just want to keep the faith because, hey, he did go 102 over the weekend, which suggests that, hey, the scoring potential and the power still is there. But I suppose it was the eye test. Not as many kicks as I'd like to see, or intercept marks, or contested intercept marks, which we love even more. So I'm not a huge fan of the pick. If you want to get out of it, I think that's okay. But if not, yeah, keep the faith. That's fine. Daniel Rich, well, I've got the Mr. Burns symbol there. He's getting older, Richie, the most experienced player on Brisbane's list, 582,700. I was actually pretty close to starting Rich as one of those pod selections. I was going to start him over Crispy. So how have I gone in the end? Well, yeah, much for much, just 98 compared to a 95. But with Rich, he's had a couple of moments in the first 2 weeks where he's looked a little bit sore. We thought, oh, geez, is the old man stuff catching up with him where he's getting these knocks and it's taking him longer to recover? I'm not too sure. I still think that he'll be a decent selection, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him possibly rested during the year. Not if we can help it, and we won't do it just for the sake of it, I don't think. But if he's looking a little bit banged up, I think we can afford that. So see how he goes. He's a really courageous type player, not afraid to go back into a pack. So I think he's underrated in that respect, Daniel Rich. Yeah, love him as a player. And Lachie Whitfield, look, I must admit, I'm really not too sure on this pick. I've got the red flag there and the binoculars. I think we need to watch him really, really carefully. Look, he just doesn't look himself. I've got a feeling he's carrying something. Not too many of the old famous 1-2s. Lacking the run and carry. Looked okay in the first pracky game, but hasn't shown much after. Am I concerned? Yes, I am. Is there hope? Maybe. We know the talent that he possesses is a proven premium, one of the best users in the comp on both sides of his body. There's a lot to like about the Lachie Whitfield selection, but at the same time, there's a lot not to like because he just doesn't look himself. And why is that? I'm really not too sure. It looks like he's carrying something, but I couldn't say that. It's just the eye test for me. Now, the question is, do we keep the faith with this man? It's completely up to you. I can't really answer that. If I could afford to, I would probably move him on if I could do it in a luxury way without using boosts and, you know, if I didn't have any holes elsewhere. I think you could do it if it was a luxury, or if it opens up maybe another avenue to a must-have player that you think that you're lacking currently. So there's circumstances where I certainly think you can trade him, but at the same time, it's okay to hold him. Now, he's going to lose 34k if he hits a projected score of 74. So in the short term, it could hurt. And if this form continues, it will really hurt because a lot of the competition own him. It's going to be interesting to see what the crowd does with him. If it ends up about a 50-50 split, then it's going to be really, really interesting. If he ends up working out at this price and really bounces back, those that jump off are going to get hurt. But if he continues in this vein of form with some low 70 type scores, then those that jumped off now, depending on who you go to, could be an absolute winner. So it's team dependent. I'm not overly confident on the pick, but in my personal situation, I think I'm going to hold him. On to the defenders, 250 to 500k. The man up the top this week, I've got as a buy now, depending on your circumstance. Huge game on the weekend, went bang, 34 disposals, 18 of those were contested, and a whopping 16 intercept possessions to go along with that as well. 79% efficiency, which is okay, and with a projected score of 78, he'll rise by almost 60k. He'll make 100k pretty quickly. Is he keep material? No, in my opinion, but he will make money. Looked good without Salem in the preseason game, and he also looked good without him this week. Now, I think there's certainly merit in either downgrading or upgrading to him. It even makes sense to even sideways trade from a Chapman Richards type, but it depends on your personal situation. I don't think he's a guaranteed pick. Look, don't expect 150s from him each and every week. That certainly won't happen. When Salem comes back into the side, that scoring power will go down, I think, but it will take Salem a little while to get back into the Melbourne side due to his injury. So I think for the short term, He could make sense for your side. Is he a must-have? I don't think, but I've got the buy now because I think he is really good value. The next bloke, George Hewitt, I'm a massive fan of. Have him as clearly the best buy from this list this week. Look, he reminds me of a bit of a baked potato. Pretty simple, but cooked really well. Doesn't have the coleslaw and sour cream, just a nice dollop of butter. He is what the Carlton midfield needed. Comes with that DPP status as a defensive midfielder, and best of all, comes under 400k, 2-round average of 124. And I must admit, he's really exceeded my expectations. I started with Hewitt. I was a big believer in Hewitt, but certainly didn't expect this after the first 2 rounds. Now, he loves to handball. He's a little bit handball happy at times. Even seems like when it kicks on, he actively looks to handball, but that's okay when he's getting so much of the pill. Love his contested game. Look, I thought he was a bit ripped off with his tackle count over the weekend. I thought to myself, well, what actually constitutes a tackle? But maybe it's just me. I'm not too sure. But what I like about him is the fact that he's that defensive sweeper. So there's a good tackle there. Obviously an easy clearance here and there. Been really consistent both games. Actually smashed his best previous scores against Richmond and the Bulldogs. And certainly, as I mentioned, in career best form. So I took a little bit of a risk and decided to go with Hewitt plus 100 odd K in the bank, or go with someone like a Ridley type, and that's certainly paid off so far. Now, is he a must-have? I'm probably going to say yes, just at the price, with what he can provide to you. I think that he's going to be really, really hard to pass up. We haven't seen Cherry in the side yet, along with all these other midfielders. I do understand that, so when the full complement comes in, that'll give us a much clearer picture, I think, but has a nice fixture coming up, and I really rate him as a player. Works so hard. Yeah, I think you've probably got to get him into your side. Now, the next few blokes, I don't know how realistic it's going to be to trade any one of these fellas in, particularly when you got the 2 names at the top. And I don't think that there's going to be anyone that's got both Hewitt and Bowie at this stage. But the Lizard, Nick Blakey, I've had to give him his own symbol this year, just in respect to the entertainment value that he provides me when he runs around. Just love watching him play. 2-round average of 89, low break even of 13. He'll make about 30k if he can go around 80. But realistically, I don't think we're trading him in at this stage. If you started with him, that's okay at this stage. Rioli, same sort of thing. 2-round average of 91, which is nice. Didn't expect that after watching him in the preseason. Looked to go up about 30k, but a pass for me. Heath Chapman, I've got the chopping block symbol on him with the binoculars, so he could be a bit of a wait and see if you, I suppose, want to put some faith into him, or if you trust the pick for some reason. But from what I've seen so far, it looks like a failure, particularly at the price, 275k. If you can, I'd certainly go up or down, or even to the side if you want to go Bowie, because he's going to certainly make a lot more money short term than Chapman will. It just doesn't seem to me like the role is there. He's got a bit of a nothing role, Heath Chapman. He's not really one of those interceptors. He's not taking any kick-outs. He even played a little bit of forward time this week. The first week, obviously without that game-saving punch, that score was pretty close to a 60, if even a 60. I think he got 21 to 23 points just for that act alone on the siren. So I don't like the pick. If you can get out of him, I recommend it. Personally, in my situation, I'm giving it 1 more week, and this is maybe a strategy that you'd like to employ if you've got Chapman and you want to do other things this week. Because look, his break even is still 25, so he's going to make a little bit of money. So what I'm looking to do anyway is wait 1 more week and then look at maybe a Sin, an O'Driscoll, a Skinner, for example, and maybe go all the way down and then invest that money somewhere else in the side. So it depends on what you want to do with him. Fine to get out this week, but also fine to wait another week, just because of the options that we'll have available within the coming weeks, I think. Bonner, real pod selection, only the 1 kick in on the weekend, but still scoring well. You're probably not going to go there. Hayden Young, I really, really like. If you're looking for an ultra pod, then I probably wouldn't back against him. But when you've got Hewitt up the top, I just like him better. But Young could really break out this year. You know, intercepting, kicking the ball a lot, usually kicks it well. Just looks really exciting, and looks like they want to use him also. Just really involved in the play. So really like the Young selection. Just a really awkward price when we've got other options available to us. Richards, he's just got to be on the chopping block. I think you've got to get rid of him, get him out of your side. Dan Houston, I've got the yin-yang on him. Look, the first couple of weeks, he's looked okay. He didn't back up his massive round 1 score in round 2, but still went close to the 100, which was nice if you're one of the few owners. But I think that you'll get some up and down scores with Houston, and consistency is always the major concern, I think, with this pick. Brad Hill had a few kick-ins on the weekend, 93 for a 2-round average, but I'm just not a fan of the Brad Hill pick. I don't think I could do it myself. McGovern looked really good in the weekend, one of those senior players that stepped up in the absence of many of his teammates, the majority of teammates, but 481,000, probably a little bit too expensive for me. 116 for a 2 rounds is really nice, but I expect that's lower as the season progresses. Adam Sard, 105 for his 2-round average. Again, one of those pod selections, but I think he may be a little bit of a yin-yang. Have a poor week, have a nice week, and a little bit too up and down for me. Jeremy Howe, a definite pod, 97. He's the interceptor down there at Collingwood, but durability is always going to be a big concern. And if I'm picking between Hewitt and Howe, I'm certainly going with a George Hewitt. Marcus Adams is a real pod. You're not going to go near him, though, at 417k, but did just want to highlight his really solid start to the season. He's such an important player for the Lions. That one was probably just a little bit of Lions bias getting him in there. Jack Sinclair, really interesting player, 469k, spending a bit of time down back, 107 as an average, but again, how much faith do we have in him? I'm not too sure. I haven't followed St Kilda overly closely during the preseason, so personally haven't got a great read on the pick. And James Sicily, well, again, a really interesting one here. He's probably, well, not on the high list of priorities to trade in. Probably last week, at the end of last week, I was thinking, yeah, he's probably someone I'm going to have a look at. Maybe in place for Crisp if Crisp has a really terrible round 2. But now when you've got other options that are available, either 100k more, like a Short, a couple of 100k less, like a Bowie, it just doesn't make a lot of sense bringing him in at this stage. But look, if you've already got like a Bowie type selection, you've already got a Hewitt, and you want to go down from a premium like a Rich, for example, that's not working out too well, even someone like a Lockie Whitfield, then it's something that you could look to do. Where's he going to end up in regards to averages by the end of the season for defenders? I think that he could be around the top 10. I don't think that's out of the realms of possibility, but I'm just a little bit unsure on the pick. So if you've got him, I think he's fine. His ownership, I think, is above 30%, which is okay. But if you don't own him, you certainly don't need to rush to trade him in. I've got the symbol there, the man with the wallet. If you're looking for one of those players that presents a little bit of value, you haven't got the cash to go up to a real uber premium, then he could be someone to take a quick squiz at. And on to the defenders under 250k. Here's where the rookies are at. Up the top of the list, we've got Paddy McCartan, 157,800 with a 2-round average of 75. So his break-even is negative 58. So I've got him as a must-have. If he goes around to 75 again, looking to go close to 60k in value this week. So jump on board Paddy McCartan. I think we've all got him, don't we? Defensive forward, DPP status. You've just got to get him in. Lovely game over the weekend as well. Score of 80, had 9 marks, 2 of those contested, 7 intercept possessions. I actually had him on the bench and had the man beneath him, Mitch Hinge, on field, and I was worried, but absolutely wrapped with Hinge in the end as well. So 180,900, so paying a little bit more than McCartan, you know, a Gibcus type, even a Joel Smith that you see down there. But I think for me anyway, and particularly with the structure that I'm running, it's worked out pretty well at this stage. You know, week 1 wasn't looking terrific, bit of a change in role, playing ahead of the ball at times. But yeah, really nice role this week, you know, down back, pushing up to a wing. I liked what I saw from Mitch Hinge. So even with the projected score of 45, he's even looking to go up 32k, which is really, really nice. So is he a must-have? No, I don't think he's a must-have, but I've still got buy now. I think that, yeah, this can pay off this pick. Not a whole heap of money, you know, we're not talking 200k value type, but I just think he's got really nice job security, particularly if you're running 2 rookies down back. And, you know, we've already seen players like O'Driscoll. Does he come in? I'm not too sure. Players may be in and out, but I think Mitch Hinge will be one that we can rely on to stay in the side at least. Luke Foley, 244,900, so 2-round average of 81, which is really nice. I've got the pod symbol there, but the issue is you're probably not going to be paying for Luke Foley when you've got another player from Melbourne, Jake Bowie, at a pretty similar type price. You're paying a little bit more, but I just don't think this is going to be too relevant. Gibcus, lots of us started him, not me personally, but I know many that did. So he's got a negative break even of 4, looking to go up about 25k. I think he'll be a slow burn there. You see the snail in the fire, a bit of a slow burn, I think, this year. Same as Joel Smith beneath him. His break even slightly different, 8 difference there, but he's looking to go up about 18k with a score of 44. Both slow burns. If you've got them, you don't look to trade them out, I don't think, unless there's absolute value. If you haven't got a Paddy McCartan, I'd certainly do that myself, but I don't think there's going to be too many situations where that's the case. And my man Noah Answorth from the Lions, absolutely love him as a player. 2-round average of 69, but again, when you've got someone like a Foley, Jake Bowie as well, you're not going to be bringing this bloke into your side, but yeah, he's going all right. And coming soon, I do have 3 names here. Sam Skinner, Josh Sin, and Nathan O'Driscoll may find themselves on the bubble next week. I'm expecting Skinner to definitely get a game. I think O'Driscoll should. And hopefully they'll give Sin another run as well. Didn't score overly well over the weekend, but hopefully Kenny keeps a faith with Sinny. So there may be 3 blokes that will be available after the next week. Do you bring them in this week? I'll probably advise against it if you can. Just give them one more week, just to see what their job security is like, just to see what their scoring potential is like. But certainly keep these blokes on your watch list. And you will also notice there that I do have a couple of the perks that you get if you decide to join up and get a membership. $3.99 a month, and all proceeds go to Beyond Blue. On to the midfielders, 500k plus. This is where the big dogs are at. And the big dog at the moment is my man Lockie Neal, priced at 543,200. Has a 2-round average of 169. If you jumped on him last week as captain, you would have been rewarded with a massive 198. So unbelievably, this bloke goes into the first round of price rises with a negative break even. Now, even the biggest optimists, such as myself, couldn't have seen this one coming, but I'll take it every day of the week. So if you haven't got this man, it's pretty simple. He is an absolute must-have. You've got to bring this bloke into your side at the expense of basically anybody. I would pretty much move mountains to get him in if you haven't. Surely you've got an easy way, maybe an underperforming premium that you trade to in the midfield, or even somewhere else using some DPP. But the value that he's going to present this year is absolutely extraordinary. So jump on this man if you haven't. I've probably taken too much time talking about him because he's that much of a must-have. The next bloke, Andy Brayshaw. Now, I've got the Uber tag there, but with a question mark, and that's saying, can this bloke really step it up this year enough to be one of these Uber premium picks in our midfield? And look, what we saw on the weekend was 40 disposals, 26 kicks, 14 handballs, 8 tackles, hit the scoreboard as well, 1 goal too. So that score could have been even bigger, to be quite honest, if he kicked a little bit straighter. So he's one of these young guns. We took Rayner ahead of Brayshaw. I still love Rayner as a player, but this bloke is absolutely elite. Does he step it up this year? Well, Cherry's gone. What's happening with Fife and Mundy? Someone like a Will Brodie is nowhere near this bloke's level when it comes to talent. So, look, if anyone can, I think that this bloke can. Now, would I be moving mountains like Lockie Neal to bring him into my side? Absolutely not. If you've got someone like a Titch, I think he'd be a nice pod type option with a bit of potential. But yeah, relying on a bit of a breakout to get to Uber status, but I think he's got the tools to be able to do it. So he's looking to rise 45k this week with a score of 127, which is pretty modest as compared to his 2-round average. I certainly don't think he's going to be going at 158 for the season. But yeah, I endorse the pick if you want to get him, but you've probably got other priorities, I think, at this stage. Trevi Boak, now I've got the Mr. Burns symbol there on him, the old man symbol. Had a really hot start to last year as well and then faded. So I wouldn't really be looking to go around this pick. Low break even of 33, certainly be a pod, but I think he's a pod for a reason. Benny Keys, talk about a pod, 560,400 for a 2-rounder of close to 140. Break even of 51, looking to go up about 23k with a score of a 104 this week. I absolutely love him as a player. And look, am I sad that he's not a Lion? I certainly am. But I think that he really did need to move clubs to really flourish, and just absolutely rap for this bloke. And I think that if you speak to any Lion supporter, they'll only say good things about Benny Keys. So, look, as a SuperCoach selection, I'm a little bit worried when Rory Laird comes back into the side as he get pushed out to a half forward. Look, he certainly shouldn't. He should demand that midfield time, and I think he deserves it. But that's got me a little bit spooked. He's a massive pod, doesn't use the ball overly well, but really high work rate. Absolutely runs his guts out and does all the team things. Love him as a supporter, but I'd probably skip him as a SuperCoach pick at this stage. One bloke that you shouldn't skip or just go past is this man, Christian Petrarca, 606,200 for a 2-rounder of 146. Break even at 62. Looks absolutely unstoppable at this stage. Now, the issue with getting him into your side is, who do you trade out? So we're not going to trade out Neil. I've got McRae. I've got Touk. So there's no way that you're going to trade those sort of blokes out. Maybe when we get to someone a little bit lower on probably the next slide, a bloke that plays for St Kilda, maybe you'd look at something like that. Could free up a little bit more money. It's probably looking like a better pick at this stage. But yeah, do I have him as a must-have? I don't think so, because I'd like to see just a little bit more. I think that traditionally his ball use has let him down a little bit, but has he been able to clean that up? Possibly, which is good. But with players like McRae and Miller in particular, I'd rate those two as must-haves. Track maybe just under that. But you could argue the other way at his price point. You're saving 70-odd K on this pick, and almost close to 90k, over 90k on the McRae pick. So there's certainly arguments that way that he presents more value, but I just think that the previous two I mentioned are a little bit safer than Track. But look, if you can bring him in, absolutely go for it. He's on fire there. I do have the buy now, so feel free to get him in if that suits your personal situation. Carl Amon as a pod, 508,000 really. We're not really going to go there, but got to give him a little bit of respect for that 2-rounder of a 114. Jolly at 117. We're not looking to trade him into the side anyway. If you've got him, you just hold. Danger, I've got the yin-yang there because had a massive first week and then a really poor second week, so I wouldn't look to go anywhere near there. Could have had the old man, Mr. Burns symbol on him as well. Touk Miller, I've got the love heart, and I'm going to have that every week. I've got a man crush on this man. I've got him as a must-have because he'll be so consistent every week. You look at that 2-round average of 139. He's just fantastic, this bloke. He just does everything. There's nothing that he doesn't do. So I'm going to keep it pretty simple there. I think you've just got to get him into the side. Callum Mills, well, I've got the binoculars there. I think he's a watch. I'm a little bit concerned about that injury, but really hit back over the weekend after a modest sort of week one. So, look, keep him on your watch list, I think, for now, but you'd be pretty crazy trading him into your side at this stage. I don't think too many people started with him, to be quite honest. Jack McRae I've got as an absolute must-have. You're paying almost 700k, but his break-even is still actually in the green, and it's a 134. So that says something about his 2-round average of 138. He's just Mr. Consistent. I didn't have him as my VC on the weekend. I was kicking myself after the game, but then patting myself on the back after on when I put the big C symbol on Lockie Neal. So sometimes these things work out, other times they don't. But you've just got to have him. It's as simple as that. He's going to kill you every week. He's just ultra consistent with the early games. He's the sensible vice-captain's choice. Yeah, there's not much more discussion needed, I don't think, with Mr. Jack McRae. Zeret, he's a sell, unfortunately. Gonski through a Jared Berry tackle, which is unfortunate. And we will get to Jared Berry soon, have a little bit of a chat about him. And Darcy Parish, well, he's been disappointing, hasn't he, with a 2-round average of 105. I wouldn't rush to trade him out at this stage. I'd keep the faith with someone like a Parish. I think that there's some good signs there. Zeret's obviously out, so he probably steps up. Or does that mean he gets more attention from the opposition? I'm not too sure, but I think that he'll relish the responsibility, I think, and I would be holding him at this stage. I wouldn't be looking to trade him out. Clary, one of those players that I really, really wanted to select this year, but unfortunately just couldn't fit them all in. He's looked okay, 672,000 for a 2-round average of 117. Projected 111. That break even is in the red, but look, to be quite honest, it's very rare when you select blokes at this price at the start of the season that they don't come down a little bit. That always happens. It's a pattern. Be prepared for that. Do not stress. Particularly don't stress on a pick like Clayton Oliver, don't think so. I've got the safest houses picks here because I just think he's going to be a really safe Uber premium for us this year. One that I'll definitely look to get into my side as soon as possible. Ollie Wine's got the Brownlow symbol there, but as a SuperCoach pick, just know for me, I've never really been a fan of the Wine selection. Loves that contested ball, understand that. Has some really nice games as well, has a decent ceiling, is a pod, but just not for me. Just think there are much better options, like Petrarca, for example. The Bond, absolute pass for me. If you haven't got him in your side, look, if you do, yeah, he worries me. He worries me, particularly when you've got players a little bit more expensive, all the way down to someone like Petrarca, all the way down to someone that we're going to talk about when we get to the next slide. But yeah, I would be almost getting out. I know it's early, but I suppose I didn't really ever like him as a starting pick anyway, so it might be a little bit biased there. So easy for me to say as a non-owner, but there definitely are some concerns there. Same as Guthrie, over 600k, 2-round average of 94, break even of 173. I think this could be a corrective if you haven't got any other major issues in your side. Lions, I think, on the chopping block, average of 93, you're paying more than you are for Guthrie, just under what you're paying for Bont. And even there, between Lions and Bont, it's what a 12-point difference. So, yeah, I'd definitely be getting out of the pick. Now, I can't believe I'm saying this 2 rounds into the season, but I think there is valid discussion as to whether or not we look to trade Jack Steele out of our sides. Now, he's costing us 685k, a 2-round average under 3 figs at 99, and a break-even at a whopping 203. So there are questions that we certainly need to ask ourselves. If he goes around the ton this week, he's going to be going down over 40,000 just this week. Now, for me, and this is the eye test, he just looks a little bit off, to be honest. Not his usual self. May just be sick of carrying this team, but still had 13 tackles, attended the most CBAs, 18 out of 21, so that's all there. But just looked a little lethargic at times, and I just can't get a read on him. So I wouldn't blame you for keeping him, and I wouldn't blame you for trading him. It's completely up to you. If you're missing someone like a Lachie Neale, definitely make this trade. Do you go sideways to a Miller or a McRae? It's really, really hard, because I would not be surprised whatsoever to see this bloke come back with a 140 odd next week. He's a really proud man. He's a gun player, and we've seen this for 2 years. We've seen premium scoring for the last 2 years. So he's not like some sort of flash in the pan from last year. This bloke is a real deal. Now, I don't know what's up with him. Is he carrying a niggle? As I said, I don't have the answers to these questions, but it's completely up to you what you want to do with him. If you can go to a Neale, that's okay. Sideways, maybe. Or do you go all the way down to someone like a Paddy Cripps? That could work out, or else it could really bite you in the bum. But we'll talk about Paddy Cripps in a minute. But that's my quick thoughts on Jack Steele. Sorry, I can't really give you too many answers there. And Titch, well, you just got to sell him. Get rid of him. 211 as a break-even. 2-round average of 81. He doesn't look right. We knew there were some issues there. Just jump ship now. Get onto another premium. Onto the midfielders, 250 to 500k, and the man up the top, John Newcombe, it's a little bit of a surprise to me. Would not have predicted this before the start of the season. He's priced at 261,300, 2-round average of 94, break even in the negatives, negative 34. So with the projected score of 69, he's going up 45k, and I think that he can get that, well, if you're based off his 2-rounder anyway. Now, the issue with Newcombe, and he's a little bit unlucky, I think, old Jai, this year, is the fact that we've got so many other options. So you look at Matty Rowell, who's under 100k above Newcombe, who I think is going to be a lot safer. Paddy Cripps, you're paying almost 200k more for, but I think it would be worth it. It's just so tough for someone like Newcombe this year, simply given the fact that we've got so many other options. So I think he's going to be a pass, but if for some reason you started him, I think you'd be pretty happy with what he's produced so far. Now this man, this is where all the talk's at, isn't it? Paddy Cripps, this is where the talk's at. I think I got this wrong. Look, I had him in my team for a very short period of time in the preseason. Then I thought to myself, now surely I can't trust him. Something's going to happen. So first practice game, it was at 98. And then in the Amy game, bang, 157. And his last 2 scores, 132, 162. So we've now got 4 weeks data to assess this pick. And in my humble opinion, I think that he is a must-have. If you don't jump on him now and he continues his form and he does become a keeper, you're just too far behind the pack with this pick, I think, at the value that you're currently getting him at. Now, I don't think, unless we see something drastically change for Cripps, that he's going to have another off season. And the reason why I think this or say this is because he just looks like he's running so well, almost taking on his opponent. He get to 65 and instead of just trying to bomb it long and, who's getting probably 40 metres on a kick last year, he'll actually try to take on his opponent, use his leg power, use his strength, give the old fend off, brush past him, and then boot from 55 for goal and actually get the distance. He just looks like an absolute monster, and even last week decided to take the third quarter off and still banged out an absolute monster. So as I said, 4 weeks of data now, everything seems really positive. If you started him, you've got a huge advantage, but he's run as freely as I've seen him in 3 years. I reckon, a broken / fractured back, whatever it was last year, that would have absolutely killed him. He's got more support there, players like a Hewitt in there, so underrated for Paddy Cripps. I think it's just so good for his game. He's hitting the scoreboard as well. Really, really damaging in all aspects, contested possession, fantastic. The clangers, they'll continue with Paddy Cripps, but he's getting enough of it for that to be okay, I think. So the concern is that, look, do the Dogs tag him? Is he going to get a lot more attention as the season progresses because he has been so damaging? They normally back their own mids in, but do they chuck a Libber on him or a Dunkley again at the stoppages? I'm really not too sure. But from what I've seen in the last 4 weeks, this was 2018-2019 Cripper at his finest. So he's going to be really, really hard to pass up. I know that some people are sacrificing a lot to bring Patrick Cripps in this week, and as I said, in my opinion, he is a must-have. I really don't blame them. He's coming into my side this week, and the man that he's coming in for is actually on this list, and I'll talk about him in a little bit. So I'd move a lot to get Patrick Cripps in. It's certainly not a guarantee, but I think it's riskier not going with him than going with him and he fails, because a lot of people are going to jump on board. A lot of people already had the faith in Paddy to start with him. So if you don't own him, yeah, it could be big, big trouble for you. I'm jumping on this week. The Wonder Boy, Matty Rao, love this bloke. Round 1, 33 disposals against depleted West Coast side, 6 tackles, also 6 free kicks, 4, which boosts his score, and has always had a ton of contested possessions. Last week, little quieter, with a 77.19 disposal game. On the opposite end of the free kick count this week, 0-4 and 5 against, which I think also obviously prevented him from getting closer to 3 figures. So I'm not too spooked by a lower scoring game. I think it's his floor, and with an energetic Gold Coast midfield, Witt's tapping it down his throat, I'm expecting at best potential M8 keeper status, at worst a decent money maker. So definitely a buy now, in my opinion. Caldwell, been impressive, looking like he's won the battle short term between himself and Berry, and Bez may have done him a favour score-wise by taking Merritt down. Merritt's obviously out with the syndesmosis, so does this bloke step up, get more opportunity? Possibly, Langford's out, so at 266,700, maybe a decent selection. Now, we're probably not going to buy into him, but if you've got him, yeah, pretty decent pick at this stage. Now, Tom Green, I've got him as a pod. Look, can he keep it up? I've got him in draft, so wrap with that. Really, really big score in round 1. A little bit lower, as we expect, in round 2. Is it going to be a keeper? Yeah, well, look, you've got Cripps at 24k more. The security of someone like a Cripps with his history, surely it can't go past, and you can't have them all, so he's just got to be a pass for us all, I think, Tom Green. Now, Luke McDonald, the only reason why I'd select Luke McDonald, I think, is if you're planning for your defensive structure. So in round 6-7, when the DPP changes come into effect, I think that he'll go automatically into your back line. So people may be planning for that and getting him now because he's got a break even of -10. So this is the time to get him in. Taking some kickouts, but they're really sharing them around North Melbourne at the moment. So a really interesting selection. We've seen in the past he's had premium status, really, really high averaging type player if he's played in the right role. And let's be honest, the way they chip it around down there, Zeeble, McDonald and Hall could be D1, 2 and 3 by the end of the year. I'm exaggerating there, but you know what I mean. That's just the style of play down there at North Melbourne. So could be a really sneaky selection if you're planning for him to most likely go back. Pat Lipinski, now this is a big George pick, isn't it? So he's a big fan of Paddy, 359,900, break even of -9, so 2-round average of 110, projected to go 77. If he does that, he's rising 38k. Owners would be hoping that he'd go 100 plus. Now, will he be able to do that? I'm just not quite sure. I'm not really over this pick. He's not someone that I've been overly keen on, but if someone like George is into him, then he's definitely got potential. So I think with the other options we've got available, your Rouse, your Cripps, these types, you probably can't fit a Lipinski in at this stage. But if you're keen on him, you think he's got the role, potential forward DPP, as he's been coming off the half forward line, it could work out that way. But if not, yeah, it could be a really unfortunate trade in. So I'd advise, probably not trading in. But if you've got him, you obviously just keep him. Now, this man, Jared Berry, you know how much I love this man. You know how much I love Bez. 268,500. If we take our minds back to round one and think back to the first and second quarter, this man was on a score in the mid-60s. We were celebrating, dancing, jumping up and down, going, yes, yes, we knew it. This is what this man can produce. And all of a sudden, a couple of weeks' time, personally, I'm actually considering trading him. Now, the only reason why I'm considering this is because I'm going up to Paddy Cripps, and he's the only bloke in my midfield that I think I'll be able to use in order to do that. So, with Jared Berry, I've got the tag symbol there because he's obviously tagging Merritt from, I think, midway through the second quarter. And Chris Fagan has also flagged, there's an article that came out and said that no one is untaggable. If we need Berry to be used in that role again, we won't hesitate to do it. So that's a bit of a concern. Look, that means he'll be around the ball. He'll get a high tackle count, which is nice. He still presents value at his price, and this is the tough thing, but I just think that Cripps is that much for must-have. Break even of 14, a projected score of 52. That's only going up 17k. If you can even get towards the 70, 75, that'll get closer to the 25k mark that he'll rise, pushing towards that 300 mark. But look, it really pains me to do it, but with a couple of options such as your Rouse, such as your Cripps, if you don't have these blokes, he probably has to go. But I do want to stress, if you have got him and you are not desperate to bring someone else into your midfield, then he's absolutely fine to keep at this stage, I think anyway. Matty Kennedy, a super pod selection. He's absolutely gone nuts, and he's continued his preseason form. You know, remember he was an early draft pick at the Giants, and he seemed a little bit lost for a couple of years at Carlton, but he's really come out this year confident. I know that Voss rates him. Now, where does he fit within this midfield when everyone is available? I'm not too sure. I assume that he may spend a little bit of extra time up forward because he is good overhead, can be damaging on the scoreboard, and they've just got some other better midfielders, I think. But he's playing out of his skin at the moment. If you're going for an ultra pod, then, geez, you could live dangerously, I suppose, but you'd have to have pretty big kahunas, I think. And Matty Crouch hasn't really worked out so far with a 2-round average of 97. Looking to go down $800 with a projected score of 86. Does he go above that? It's possible, but yeah, you certainly don't look to trade him in. If you haven't got, again, I go back to Patrick Cripps, your Rouse, these types. If you haven't got one of those blokes, then I think it's okay to trade down from Crouch, make a little bit of extra cash, and use it wisely elsewhere. On to the midfielders under 250k. The man up the top this week is Dylan Stephens. So negative break even of 56, priced at 167,800. 2-round average of 77 after a really nice 95 last week. Loved his role. We know that he's a mature rookie, has already spent some time in the system, which is handy. Is used to the Swans system as well, which means good things, I think, for this pick. I think he's only going to go up in price, up. An easy 150k, I think, in the bank for us with Dylan Stephens. Looking to go up around 46k if he can hit a projected score of 49. So that's pretty modest in regards to his 2-round average there. So I think he can definitely do that, and hopefully he can go up around 60k just this week. So I've actually got him as a must-have. I think that he is. You've got other blokes like Ward who are paying a little bit more for. If you've got him over a Stevens, it's a really tough decision whether or not to waste a trade, but I just like the look of Stevens so much more. We'll get to Ward in a minute though. So I think he's a must-have. You may disagree, but I think it's really important to have this bloke in your side. Horn Francis, well, we've all got him, 207,300. This man is built for SuperCoach. 10 more points on Stevens for that 2-round average. He's got an 87, negative break-even of 52. He's projected to go 87 and rise over 60k. So I've got him as an absolute must-have, and he's got his own symbol. He's got the horns going on there. Alex Davies, well, he's an absolute pod. I don't think that we can fit him in with the other options that we've got. If you want to, you can go for it, but I just think there are some safer options to go for and more logical options at this stage. Nick Dacos have all got as well. They're looking to go up 50k if he can hit a score of 76. Connor McDonald, again, I think most of us have this fella on our benches. He's going to be a hold, I think. There's no need to trade him out for anyone else. Maybe a slower burn than someone like a Stevens, Horn Francis, these type of blokes, but at the same time, all good. 117k, 2-round average of 52, all good at this stage. Mead is a pass for me, just a bit of a sub risk, I think. Same as Saligo right down there at the bottom. He's actually looking to lose money, unfortunately, after coming on as a sub and getting a really, really low score. And Josh Ward, well, look, if you need to get to a Paddy Cripps, do you sacrifice someone like a Ward? I've got hold there. Personally, I just think that he's got a good game in him, a big game in him, which is really going to spike his price. We've seen that in the preseason, what he's been able to do. He may have to rely on an injury or two, but at this stage, I think he's just going to be a little bit of a slow burn, and we're just waiting for that big game from Ward. But look, if you really need to, I don't think he's the worst rookie to cull, but it may come back to bite in the bum a little bit later on in the season, I think. But that's a quick take on the midfielders under 250k. On to the rucks, and there's a little bit of discussion to be had on this line. Now, the man up the top, Jack Hayes, I think he's a must trade in if you don't own him. Took the comp by storm in the first round. A more modest score of 68 in round 2, but still really solid nonetheless. He can do everything, you know, take a contested grab, hit the scoreboard, sneak a clearance and a hit out every now and then. And he's also good below his knees for a big man. Now, the only possible downside is the availability of rider, but in my humble opinion, they'd be mad to drop this fella. So if named, make sure he's in your team before the ship has sailed. Lloyd Meek, I only raise his name because I'm not sure what's going on with Darcy. You know, he's a capable ruckman and a capable scorer if given the number 1 role temporarily. Just depends on how long Darcy's out for. So if it's medium to long term, I think he could be a really good selection. Luke Jackson, wowee, you know, this bloke is absolutely elite, and they reckon that he might be the next $1 million man in the game. How are Melbourne going to fit him in if he demands that type of money? Surely someone's got to go off the books. It'd be really interesting to see how this plays out in the end. So he's put contract talks on hold for now. Now, as a SuperCoach selection, he's got that DPP status as a ruck forward, 389,800, a break even of 3. So if he goes around a 94, he's going up 40k just this week. And all of a sudden, you see him at about 430 odd with probably a low break even going into next week as well. So an interesting selection. Would I trade him in? I'd just be a little bit nervous. I'm just not sure if this is going to be his year. If he was a solo ruck, absolutely. In years to come, I think he'll be a staple in our sides because this bloke is absolutely elite. But just with his pairing of Max Gawn at the moment, I'm just not quite sure. Probably a pass for me, but if you want a pod and you believe in him, I wouldn't, have a go at you for that. I wouldn't back against you necessarily. Baylor Williams, just skip right past him with all the other options that we've got. I just don't think that you go there. Now, Witts is a really interesting selection. A 131, a 75 in his first 2 hitouts for a 2-round average of 103. So a lot of discussion about this bloke as he seems to present value to his price, and he could be a potential gap filler. He has gone Nick Nat out of the way early, which I think's nice. 28 hitouts versus West Coast and 38 versus Melbourne, averaging 3 tackles, 4 clearances, 13 disposals. He looks like a solid pick, and with the potential for someone like a Max Gawn to be leaking so much cash, and we'll talk about him in a minute, it could make sense to jump ship, go to someone like a Wits who you think will be a solid option, average enough just to get you by, make a little bit of cash in the meantime, wait for Gawn to come down and maybe jump on again. And this is just one example with Max Gawn not looking great at the moment. So personally, that's a move that I'm actually looking to do. But the main reason why I'm looking to do that is that it facilitates two other trades that I want to make. And yes, I'm probably going to use a boost, but I think I'm bringing in two other must-haves. I'm not saying that Wits is a must-have, but the other two blokes that I am bringing in, I do view as must-haves. So that's why I'm deciding at this stage to bring Jared Wits into my side. I'm not saying it's for everyone, but it allows me to do what I really want to do. So fingers crossed that this selection works out. Let's go Witsy. Sam Draper, 396k, so he's costing a little bit more than Wits, averaging 8 points less a game. I just prefer the Wits option over him. Could be one of those breakout picks, but I'm not a fan of selecting breakouts. I'd rather Wits as a fallen premium, and Wits has never had that uber premium type average before, but I still think he's a little bit safer than Draper in regards to that. Timmy English, well, a lot of discussion about this bloke. He's a ruck forward. Could he be a potential top 6 forward? I think that he could. Now, the issue for me, particularly going into this week, is will Steph Martin come into the side? And I'm not sure at the time of recording for this video. Aaron Norton's looking really sore. He may even miss this week. So does that mean that English is then used up forward more? Steph's brought in as that number 1 ruck. I'm not too sure. So this is always a little bit of a concern. The other concern is the fact that he's not a great tap ruckman. He's not a great ruckman at all, but he's really, really good around the ground. So that's where he does all of his damage, Timmy English. So 2-round average of 111, break even of 60. This could be a decent selection, whether it's in the ruck, it's in the forward line, whatever floats your boat there. Yeah, I'm not too sure. There's a little bit of risk attached to it with the Steph Martin factor still, and the fact that, as I mentioned, he's not a great ruckman, but this could also pay off. So I'm a little bit 50-50 on this one. Not for me, but wouldn't blame me for bringing him in. Rob, I'm just going to pass on, a pod, but what's he delivering? A 101 for a 10. He's basically delivering what he's priced at. The Big O, I'm a pass on him as well. Had a really nice first round, but then came back down to earth, sharing too much of the time with Darcy Fort. I hope that he'll get forward status, and I'm looking to pick him up maybe around round 12 if all things go well. Rowan Marshall, again, after a really solid first week, struggled in the second week. I don't even think he outscored Hayes, so that's happened for the second week in a row now. I wouldn't be jumping on, but would you be jumping ship? Probably not for me, unless you really, really need the money and you go down to someone like a Wits. I probably wouldn't recommend that unless it's getting you in another player that you feel like you just really, really need in your side. But yeah, I wouldn't panic too much. See how he goes. It'll be interesting when, or if Ryder comes back on the side and see how that affects him. Really not too sure on the Marshall pick, but try not to panic too much. Brodie Grundy, we've all got not much discussion, but yeah, 2-round average of 113, anywhere around 115 I think is realistic for Brodie Grundy. I wasn't expecting huge things from him, as I wasn't really from any of the ruckmen going into this year. Darcy, as you see below, and I've got the asterisks on him. I'll talk about him in a minute, but I think he's got a massive ceiling, and he could be one of the ruckmen that really go off this year. But Grundy, I think, just really safe. Keep on to him. We've all got him, I think. Now, Darcy does have the asterisk there because I do only include players that have played 2 games, but he's a bit of a special case, I think, just in case you do have him. He's only played the 1 game, so that 2-round average is really the 1 game average of 72. The break even at this stage is 186, but that will obviously change depending on what he gets next week. So his next game, it won't actually be involved in the price rises because he did miss the first game. So interesting to see what happens with him, but yeah, I've obviously got the injury symbol on him there. Not too sure how he's tracking. And we'll finish off with Max Gawn. This one hurt. I was expecting a big response from this man, but again, failed to deliver. And my original preseason concerns have come to fruition. And what was that? Well, it was Luke Jackson factor. Basically a 50-50 ruck split on the weekend. Just didn't like that. The main issue, I think, with Gawn is points per dollar. And if you compare his with someone like a Witz's points per dollar, yeah, it's a big difference. It's a lot of cash to have invested in someone that A, is likely about to plummet in price, and B, his ruck time is decreasing. Now, the good thing, or the upside, I suppose, with someone like a Gawn is the fact that he still does possess somewhat of a ceiling, and on his big days, he can go as big as anyone else. But I just think that those days are numbered. I was still expecting a really nice average from him, anywhere from a 115, maybe to a 120 odd if all things went well. But at this stage, that may not be the case. So the question is, do you jump ship? Well, who do you jump ship to? You could go in English, save yourself a little bit of money there, and at the same time, you may have also invested in a top 6 forward, so you can just switch him. You've also got someone like a Cherry who's going to provide that DPP status if you've got him in your side that could link up with an English. Jared Witts is another obvious one if you're looking for a bit of a cash grab and someone that's going to be pretty solid each week, as well as making a little bit of coin himself, you'd hope anyway, or what we're seeing over the first 2 weeks. That seems pretty likely. I think everyone's got a Brodie Grundy. We don't go to a Darcy. None of the other blokes I would really recommend. Maybe Meek, just say if Darcy's out, as I said, for the medium term, that could be a play. Could you trust Jack Hayes? Probably not for me because of the rider factor. I just don't know what's going to happen. I'd love to have one more week or see a week when Ryder maybe is in the side and see if all 3 of them play. I'm talking about Hayes, Ryder, and obviously Rowan. So I'm really not too sure there what the strategy is. But for me, personally, I'm going the Wits option. But again, nothing set in stone at this stage. If you want to keep on to him and keep the faith, then that's fine as well, because I still think that he's going to be a top 2 ruck. I think it's most likely going to be Grundy and Max Gawn. So my plan is to get him back in at some stage. I'm just hoping that the cash that I make and what I do with that cash now and the price that I'll be able to get him back into my side, I hope that's all friendly and I hope that that works out well. And obviously I'm relying on Jared Witts to have a pretty solid start to the season. But that's just me. Whatever you want to do with Maxi, it's up to you. But a big discussion point this week, and this will separate sides. On to the forwards, 500k. Don't need a lot of discussion here, so this will be a pretty quick slide. Got Timmy Taranto, forward mid up the top. You can see I've got the binoculars and the role reversal symbol. I'm just waiting for Toby Green to get back into the side. Then I may look to get this man in. Josh Dunkley, I think we've all got him. Had him as my vice-captain on the weekend, which was a little bit disappointing. He even played a bit of a lockdown role at times, which we don't want to see, but I wouldn't worry too much about Josh Dunkley. He'll bounce back. He will definitely be one of the top averaging forwards this year. Tommy Hawkins, I've got the roller coaster there, and that's what you're going to get with Hawkins, or really any key forward. A really big game to start off with in round 1, and then really quiet in round 2. That's just what you're going to get with key forward. And Chad Wingard, keep this one pretty simple. If you do have him for any reason, get him out of your side. He's just a terrible pick. Onto the forwards, 250 to 500k. The man up the top, Cogs. He doesn't need much discussion. We've all got him. Has the potential to be a borderline keeper, I think, at this stage. Break even of negative 26, making money, which is what we want. The next man is in ripping form, similar to Aaron Hall, one of my pre-season locks, but just got spooked in the Amy game. Decided to go with a different structure, so can't complain. But he's my best buy this week. An average of 141 after 2 bags of goals in 2 weeks. Still attending some CBAs, coming up the ground. Just looks so clean. He oozes potential. And when Papley gets back, I expect his CBAs to rise. Now you say, surely he can't continue with this massive run of goals. Or can he? You know, after he plays the Dogs this week, he comes up against North, West Coast, Hawthorn, where a lot of points could be on offer. Looking at certainty, or I shouldn't say certainly, it's only 2 rounds I know, but after 2 rounds, looks a certainty of being a top 6 forward, and it may be the cheapest that you're going to get him in a long time. But as always, role durability is a slight concern, but I am jumping on myself. I'm hoping for dreams of Heaney, not nightmares of Heaney. The next man, Brad Close. Look, a couple of out-of-the-box games possibly. Huge pod, but can't seem really keeping up. I think it's just an easy pass for me. Zach Butters, I'll keep this pretty simple. He's a must-have, and you should have him in your side. Jay Gresham, yeah, look, he's an interesting one, Gresham. I think he's a pass for me purely because of the other options that we've got. You know, it may work out, but I think you either go up to a Heaney type or down to a Brodie or a Cherry. But if you do have him currently, I think that you probably hold. Errol, I couldn't do it, but a massive pod. There's been a bit of discussion about Mitch McGovern this week. 256,000, 2-round average of 55, a break even of 40. It's still in the green, but owners would have been pretty disappointed last week. Now, you're certainly not trading into McGovern, so This is more for current owners, I suppose. Now, if you look at his projected score, even a 61, which again would be underwhelming for what you're probably predicting or hoping that McGovern would score, he's still going up around 10k. So this isn't a disaster yet. You've still got some options. Now, option one is obviously just to keep on to him. Hold the faith. I think certainly that he's got a big game in him. I was pretty keen on him. Really liked his role in week one. Thought he looked fantastic. Did some really nice things. Had some kick-outs, some nice intercepts, some really nice entries inside 50. Thought, geez, that disposal's looking fantastic. And then last week, just did not look good at all. Looked a little bit lost there. Didn't really use him. Kick-outs were minimal for him as well. It was just a bit of a different Mitch McGovern. Injury is always a bit of a concern. You're worried, what's this man going to do next? Yeah, personally, because I think there's a really good option in the forward line, being Isaac Heaney, and I've worked out a way to be able to get up to him, I'm trading Mitch McGovern out this week. And why is that? Well, someone's got to go, and it's not going to be Brody, it's not going to be Cherry, it's not going to be Rochelle, not going to be someone like a Hayes or even someone like a Nick Martin, who I haven't included obviously in this video because he's only played the one game. Now, for me, it's a matter of he's the worst bloke that I've got. You know, it's 12 minutes straight in the bench again, which just wasn't great. You know, it didn't get scaling for an inset mark. It was just later in the game, I think, which was a little bit of a bummer. On the plus side, I suppose, he'll be a future DPP swing. You'll be able to get him in your back line. That was a big part of my plan in selecting Mitch McGovern in round 6, 7, whatever it is, to pop him back there in my defensive line just to shore that up. But I have been spooked by his game last week. So for me personally, he is going. What could you do if you're not going up? Well, there's Cherry. If you haven't got him, I think he's probably a must-have. We'll talk about him soon. Yeah, it's probably a couple of these blokes that you'll find below this price range. So I won't talk about them yet, but Mitch McGovern, bit of a yin-yang. Look, good round 1, not so good round 2. Could be on the chopping block. To go, he played some pretty decent football. 103 for his 2-round average. Break-even of 65. Can you trust him? Look, I've always got the caution sign there with the Degoe pick. Just that off-the-field sort of nonsense. You never know what he's going to do. But at the same time, I do have the binoculars on there. I'd rather just wait and see on a pick like Degoe. This is if you don't own him. If you do own him, you're obviously going to keep him. But if you don't own him, there's certainly no way that you trade into him yet. Just give him a few weeks, see how he goes, and then maybe look to upgrade to him. Cam Rayner seems to be a bit of a failed pick at this stage. You probably get out of him for one of the value options or one of these blokes that have close to a negative break even. Treloar probably doesn't need a lot of discussion because you're not buying him, but as an owner, you're not trading him out. You're probably just okay with the pick at the moment. Bailey, again at 459k, just hasn't worked at this stage. More of a forward. That's where he's most damaging, I think, anyway. Break even of 118, that is in the red. Not great at this stage. Possibly on the chopping block, a correctional trade if you've got the luxury. And Taron Thomas, unfortunately, is a sell. Is going to be out, I think, for 4 to 6 weeks. You've just got to get rid of him. Unfortunate, because he was a bit of a pod. And we'll finish with the forwards under 250k, and one of my favourite selections this year is a man up the top. If you watch my round review, you would have seen the title, Sweet Cherry Pie, Tristan Cherry, 208,200 with a 2-round average right on the dot, 100. He's got a break-even of negative 77, and if he hits a modest projected score of only 58 on the weekend, he'll rise over 60k. So I've actually got him as an absolute must-have. Is an absolute shoe-in to get DPP status when it comes to round 6. He'll be a really nice switch if you've got a Hayes or a Dixon type, even if you're going with someone like an English, who we mentioned before, even a Jackson. If you're that risky, I'm certainly not, but I think that this bloke is an absolute must-have for a number of reasons. Now, he's obviously now the number 1 ruckman down there at North Melbourne. Still shared a lot with Goldie, don't get me wrong, but Goldie, I think, is being phased out slowly but surely and is actually looking pretty good as a forward as well. So Cherry, this was the ultimate game for him, I think. And look, I think that this is a really good indication of what his ceiling will be like, because let's be honest, he's not going to have an easier game or come up against easier opponents for the rest of the year, if not in his whole career when it comes to an AFL match. But he did play a lot more time forward in the last quarter, so I think he left a 140 at the door. He's not afraid to go for a ground ball, just loves the contest, loves the contact, often looks to take out a body, but just the perfect game, as I said, to seal the ceiling looks like. And I really like what I saw. Now, what's he going to average for the rest of the year? I think an 80 to an 85 is something that's realistic, and that is certainly good enough at this price. So there are a lot of tempting options around the 200 to 250k mark. Pencil this bloke in if you haven't got him as an absolute must-have in your side, I think, in my opinion. Josh Rochelle, what a magic man, forward mid. The magic was lost a little bit last week after two really solid practice matches, a really solid round one performance. We're thinking, well, this bloke's just going to kick 3 to 5 every week, but did come back down to earth a little bit, as we expected, and that's why I did opt to start him on my bench this year and have a little bit more security there. Has that worked out? Not overly well so far, but we'll see how it's going to work out into the future, but still great to have on your bench or even on field, I think, at this stage, because his 2-round average is 88. Obviously, a bit of a quieter game this week. Break even is negative 68, projected score of 88. He's looking to rise 70k. So I've got the yin-yang symbol there just because they were very different games or different scores week 1 to week 2. But at the same time, I think he's pretty close to a must-have. If you don't have him at the moment, it really does depend, well, who are you trading out for him? There's probably not a heap of options that haven't worked out at this stage. So I think if you've got him, we're obviously keeping him wrapped. If you don't have him, not an absolute must. Ginnivan copped a bit of slack lately for some of his antics, but at 199,900 presents a lot of value with a 2-round average of 92, but I just don't think that he can keep it up. A real pod type selection, negative break even of 66. If you want to go right away from the crowd, feel free to bring him in, but I haven't got a lot of confidence with this pick in the long term anyway. Bo McCreary, I think news has come through. He's going to be out for about 3 to 4 weeks, so absolute pass on him. Will Brodie, really interesting one. Is he a must-have? Well, I wouldn't go as far as a must-have, but I do have the buy now symbol on him, as well as the clock, which means time on ground. Unfortunately, this is a little bit negative, the time on ground factor. But in saying that, he's still displayed the fact that he can go over 100. He did that last week. Even in the first game, a 76. That was still a pretty decent score, given the fact that lots of the points, I think, were allocated in the last quarter because it was a really close, tight game, and he spent the majority of that quarter, unfortunately, on the bench. So Brodie, I think, is a super selection. Do you look to trade him in? It's hard because we haven't seen him with Mundy and Fife both in the sides. I think he's got the role short term. He's looked good enough. I'd say yes if you can, but I wouldn't move mountains to get Will Brodie at the same time. But if you've started him, yeah, super selection. Naish is going to be a real pod because he's at that price, just under 200k. 77 is a 2-round average. Does have DPP status, which is nice. But there's probably a few other blokes that we'd have ahead of him, like your Cherries, your Rochelle, you've got to prioritise, I would say anyway. Your Brodie, I'd prioritise over him as well. But again, if you want to go away from the crowd, similar to a Ginnivan there, then go for it. But personally, not for me. But if you started with him, yeah, not a bad pod selection whatsoever. Willie Rioli absolutely tore it up on the weekend. Some of those goals, just phenomenal. Had some CBAs, I think 4 CBAs. Really had to step up in the absence of some of those other senior players and really, really did it well. I thought he had a super game. Congratulations to him. But again, there's probably other options that we look at. We just can't fit all of these blokes in. It's just too hard. If Naish was available, just say as a defensive mid, I'd really, really consider getting him in my defence. But given the fact he's a forward mid, we just don't have the spots, I don't think, for the Naishes, the Riolis. Finn McGuinness, you probably just keep him if you've got him. You don't look to trade him in. Charlie Curnow, I've got the roller coaster there, and that's what you're going to get. We know with these key forwards, terrible the first week, looked awesome last week. Which Curnow are we going to get from week to week? I'm not too sure. We'll be up and down. Durden basically didn't score for 3 quarters and scored, I think, 99% of his points in the 1 quarter, which was really, really interesting. But I thought he looked really good after the first week. Really damaging, playing up the field, hit the scoreboard, but just wasn't his week. Carlton are playing really, really well, so I think he'll have his ups, his downs. Don't look to trade him out. unless you haven't got someone like a Nick Martin. He could be a candidate if all your other forwards are working out, but certainly don't look to trade him in either. Ralph Smith, I think's just on the watch list at this stage. Sub is a little bit of a concern. Obviously came on in the first week. Or did he come in the first week? I'm not too sure if he did come on the first week or not, but played out the whole game last week. Actually looked really good, but it's just a little bit too risky for me, I think, with sub potential. I wouldn't be going near him. Austin McDonald, no, it's a pass for me, too much for pod. And Tyson Stengel, some people are talking him up after the first week, but remember, it is only 1 week. Players like Stengel can just have one of these games out of the blue where he just goes absolutely off his head. So I've got the roller coaster there. In his role, that's what we expect. You know, we can't berate him too much for his performance, but he'll have ups, he'll have downs. Just a bit of a pass for me. So that's it for now, guys. Hope you enjoyed some really tough decisions going into this week. Apologies also, I haven't responded to any of my round review comments yet. I just got straight into the stock market video. It takes me a fair while to organise this, so I will get to those ASAP. And again, for all the members, make sure that you hit me up on either Twitter or Instagram with your email, and I'll send through all of the stock market notes. That's obviously part of your membership, so make sure that you hit me up for that as well. But apart from that, guys, all the best of luck. Hope that your trade-ins and trade-outs work well, and I'll see you soon in the next one. Cheers, bye.